involved in the production chain. This is the Trump Patriot plan for Ukraine's defenses. It's allowing Ukraine to build Patriot missile systems on Ukrainian soil. Okay. A major component of a PAC-3 MSE interceptors are radar seeker, guidance electronics, altitude control section, solid rocket motor, lethality enhancer, fragmentation ring, airframe, control surfaces, launch canister, and missile uplink. Someone's going to have to make each of those things. If it's going to be Ukraine, and if they want to bypass the glacial rate of interceptor production elsewhere, they'll need production lines for all of them, and those don't exist right now. They would never dream of building one giant facility to handle all of this because it would be immediately destroyed. Yeah. It's hard to convey how difficult it would be to spin up full production of Patriot interceptors. So here are some concrete examples. It took 7 years for Poland to construct a production facility responsible for making only altitude control motors for the PAC-3 MSE. It took 3 years just to expand a final assembly facility in Camden, even though that facility already existed and was actively in use. Boeing's Seeker production line expansion in Huntsville is also projected to complete its expansion after 3 years. Japan's PAC-3 facility only took 2, but it produces 20 interceptors a year and relies heavily on important components from the U.S. Not only is it going to take a tremendous amount of time, there's also an additional amount of time to train the workers on the facility so they can actually build these components. And then also on top of that, the entire time you're building these facilities, you're going to have to be evading Russian munitions, Russian ballistic munitions. You're going to have to evade Russian drone strikes. I don't know how they're going to get away with this. I don't know what year the facility will finally be fully in production. I just don't know what the fuck they're thinking. Never bet against Ukraine. Fair. I just don't think that this is the same as being able to create a robust drone building, like a decentralized and fairly robust drone building system inside of Ukraine. Because building drones inside of your kitchen is very different than building Patriot missiles in a factory. The components are far more complex. The parts that you need and the assembly is a far more complex process than the assembly of a drone, which in many circumstances, the difference between a commercial drone and for civilian usage and a commercial drone for military usage is nothing. It's just one extra component that you can buy off the fucking TikTok shop that you assemble by hand that allows the drone to carry munitions, to carry grenades. So, very different process here than these complex missile systems. So, yeah. So, who knows? This is one of the dumbest things I've seen this admin do. There will be no Patriot missile production in Ukraine. This is a pipe dream. Ukraine has been losing interceptor stores like crazy, too. Yeah, Trump's Patriot plan will do little to fix Ukraine's urgent air defense problems because it will take many months for Ukraine to get a production facility built, and that facility will quickly become a major Russian target. Yep. Unless Ukraine takes a page out of the North Korean, Iranian, and Hezbollah and Hamas books and straight up builds an underground facility, deep underground, which, in the words of Donald Trump, Ukraine is very flat. A bullet travels for miles before it hits the ground. Ukraine, very flat. So that doesn't leave a lot of room for an underground facility, ironically enough. And then also on top of that, you know, building a massive underground facility without Russia bombing you, that's also going to be difficult too. So I don't know how they're going to get away with that, but maybe. But in the absence of a major underground facility, I don't think they will be able to successfully ramp up production for any missiles. New NATO spy agency dump shows how much Ukraine war combined with Biden-Trump aggressive anti-China policy has pushed Russia and China together in critical military development, missile defense, counter Starlink areas they'd never have cooperated on otherwise. Yeah. And the same goes for Russian targets for Iran. Like America, the American sanctions regime has diminished the confidence that people have in the dollar as the global reserve currency. The American war, the American-Israeli war against Iran is undermining the petrodollar, and the long-standing allegiances that America has developed over numerous decades with the Gulf states, which are far more important as strategic allies of the United States of America than Israel ever could be. And on top of that, there is a lot more information sharing within the axis of resistance, if you want to call it that, between China, Russia, and Iran that also has greatly improved Iranian targeting capabilities and is unironically also furthering that fissure between the Gulf states and the Americans. It's an own goal. It's not dissimilar to the mentality that if you sanction everybody, you're just basically sanctioning yourself. If you constantly wage war on all fronts, because like a lot of people I've seen on the timeline celebrate I think it was the Washington Post report that came out that talked about how like America has obviously been sanctioning or offering far better targeting capabilities to the Ukrainians so they can just like pinpoint accuracy strike critical infrastructure, the oil and gas facilities in Russia. And it is genuinely put the Russian economy in a blender, which is, you know, old school CIA shit. America used to do that all the fucking time. Fine. But that has also created this trade-off where Russia in the past might have been less inclined to give targets to Iran, especially the type of intelligence that they're sharing with Iran, that allows Iran to, ironically enough, deliver devastating blows to the American forces with pinpoint accuracy. That's the trade-off. America is forcing a somewhat less reliable part of this supposed resistance, like Russia, to either shit or get off the pot. They have said that the Russian economy will collapse any day now for like 4 years. Why is it that this time we do believe them? Up until recently, they never hit so many refineries and Russian tankers. That's the major difference here. And Russia obviously heavily relies on its refineries to keep its economy afloat. That's a huge part of the reason. I'm not saying that the Russian economy is like on its, I'm not saying Russia is going to fall apart or the Russian economy is falling apart any day now. I'm just saying that they're experiencing significant setbacks in their oil and gas production and also in their exports. This has been a far more effective tool in terms of crippling the Russian economy than the sanctions ever could. Because the reality of the matter is, at the end of the day, oil and gas is a hard commodity that has inelastic demand. It's a global commodity. And therefore, especially oil, and therefore, people will get it if it's out there. We know that, right? I don't think people care that much about whether it's Russian oil or not when push comes to shove. So the most effective way to quote unquote sanction Russia would be to destroy its refining capabilities. That's it. That's why it's a red line that most people usually don't cross, especially because when you do cross that red line, you actually end up harming the global market. And in the absence of alternatives, in the absence of alternatives that can keep up with the additional demand with extra supply, you could potentially be staring down the barrel of complete economic collapse. That's what we're looking at right now. Donald Trump is lighting the entire world on fire. Okay? Donald Trump is lighting the entire world on fire. Because while Ukraine has been able to gain tremendous leverage over Russia, and this is true, they have gained a lot of leverage over Russia by striking its critical infrastructure, striking its oil and gas facilities, striking its tankers with pinpoint accuracy, with American intelligence. Every tanker that blows up or every facility that blows up means that there is more volatility in the energy markets. And there is no other area of respite because the Strait of Hormuz is closed. It's this very weird, it's not even a balancing act at this point. They're burning the candle on both ends, pretty much. That's precisely the reason why Donald Trump actually released some of the sanctions on Russian oil in the beginning of the Iran war, right? There's a reason. And then even went so far as to release the sanctions on Iranian oil, which they put back on as of 2 days ago. What do you think of Mersheimer's concern that escalating towards economic collapse will lead Russia to escalate either against the Eastern NATO nation or even potentially use nukes in Ukraine? I don't know. I've been hearing this from a lot of the, I don't want to say pro-Russia, but I've been hearing warnings from a lot of thinkers and a lot of writers that most people would call pro-Russia. I wouldn't call them that. And I think they say that whenever the situation in Russia is really fucked up. That's usually when you start hearing from the Glenn Deason verse, yes, about how Russia's going to do something crazy now. And they might. They actually might. Because the thing is, you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy? Invading Ukraine militarily with boots on the ground warfare. Invading Ukraine all the way into Kyiv. Okay? Without actually securing air superiority over a country, over a smaller country that you thought you could easily take over militarily. That's crazy. It's crazy to have a fucking 5-year special military operation. That's what's crazy. So who knows? Yes, I know. Sachs and Mersheimer are saying that Russia is preparing to hit EU with conventional weapons because Russia thinks no way Ukraine can hit them the way they are without NATO help. I don't know. I mean, that's the active. Okay, by the way, all of that speculation, once again, proves what I've been saying, and I think it shows that Ukraine has gained a lot of leverage. So, maybe now's the time to get to the fucking table. Maybe now is the time where sufficient leverage has been maintained, and now, hopefully, diplomacy can happen. Because last time, Russia had leverage. Ukraine did not. And that's precisely the reason why Vladimir Putin played Trump like a fucking fiddle and got Trump to undermine Zelensky on the global stage, got America to stop information sharing with the Ukrainians for an extended period of time, which Russia dangled that as a condition to go to the ceasefire table. But of course, the Americans and the Ukrainians at the time kept saying, we only want a limited 30-day ceasefire. But because Russia had all the leverage at that point, they didn't want to abide by a 30-day ceasefire, or they said, we want a complete ceasefire. We don't want a 30-day ceasefire where you can re-up and rearm and continue this battle. right? Russia also had so much leverage at that point. Russia had so much leverage at that point that they thought that they could make even more territorial gains. Okay? They could make even more territorial gains if they were to undermine the security relationship between Ukraine and the United States of America, which worked. Which worked. Okay? Trump did that shit. Trump straight up was like, oh, Vladimir Putin loves me. He respects me. He's my best friend. We have phone sex. I'm going to undermine Zelensky. I'm going to publicly humiliate him. I'm going to tell the world that Zelensky's the one who's undermining the negotiations. It was actually Trump. Trump and Vladimir Putin. Okay, straight up. And it seemed at the time, because of the leverage that Russia had, or at least they perceived they had, that they would continue pushing, that they didn't want a real ceasefire. Okay? That was stupid. That was stupid. That was very stupid of Vladimir Putin to not take all the leverage it had at that moment. If we're thinking about this from the perspective of Putin, like what's the best way to try to find a manageable conclusion to this? Demands of additional territorial acquisition that you have not annexed militarily, fucking ridiculous. Demands that Ukraine can't have a standing military, fucking ridiculous. Okay? If he had dropped those two things, I suspect that, they could come to some kind of reasonable conclusion, but they didn't do that. And the reason why they didn't do that is because they wanted to continue fighting. Because they thought that they could make additional territorial gains. So the next time there's a conversation about a ceasefire, Russia could then turn around and say, well, we won those territories. Those territories are also going to be annexed. Okay? It was dumb. It was dumb as fuck. And now he's suffering the consequences. Okay? He's eating dick and balls right now. Let's be real. Ukraine, by way of drone warfare through autonomous units, has not necessarily been able to regain any of the lost territory, but they've done a pretty solid job of cutting Russian positions off of supply chains. Okay. And then on top of that, they've actually done a pretty good job of destroying, well, not destroying, but at least impeding Russian oil and gas, the Russian oil and gas industry. Yeah. You could even call it a kinetic oil sanction, because oil sanctions were obviously fucking ineffective, right? It just made it more costly for Europe, but it still reached Europe. Now it can't reach Europe because it's getting blown up. And now Russia's not making money. Is he reading his script? No, I'm not reading a script. I'm reading chat. While I'm telling you what my opinion is off the top dome. So yeah. Why can't you make the dumbass connection that we're making the rest of the world depend on our oil so we have the petrodollar in place? I mean, I have said that. That's my that's my assessment, but it's just there's no I've said that over and over again. That's part of the reason why we took over the Venezuelan the Venezuelan oil refineries. We took over Venezuela, the largest known natural reserves. It's a different type of oil, but it doesn't matter. Yes. Here's the thing, though. Will we be able to... What the fuck? bullshit. That's a crazy stray. That's crazy. Yeah. Let's be real. It's kind of funny that the majority of people on this thumbnail, are literally woke. Or at least woke adjacent. Yeah. Was that good? Did I give you guys a decent analysis on the Ukraine stuff? Now, here's the last thing I'll say. Anytime there's conversation about Russia potentially expanding on the conflict and maybe even striking the European Union, trying to threaten, trying to see if Article 5 will be triggered, like testing the boundaries of what that NATO alliance actually looks like. Anytime Russia does that, okay, understand that Russia's doing that because they're losing the battle. Okay? They're not having a good time. If they were, they would just focus their efforts on Ukraine, right? But it's clear that the Oreshniks hitting civilian territory, all that stuff is not enough. All right? So, they're obviously not having a good time currently. It's obvious that Ukraine has also been able to strike the Crimean territories fairly well as well. Yeah, Crimean Peninsula is having a real hard time with little fuel and major power outages. A mass exodus of Russians there would hurt Putin big time. Exactly. I forgot to even mention the Crimea side of this. So they're not having a good time. They're having a very bad time, simply put. This is the opportunity that Ukraine has to actually draw Russia to a permanent ceasefire. I made this. I listen, people will get mad at me, as they did way back during the Antalya summit, or the summit that took place in Turkey, where I said, Ukraine, you have maximum leverage that you will never have going forward. Please use it. And everyone at the time said that I was in the pocket of Vladimir Putin. And they said that I was wrong. They said Ukraine is going to purge the Russian orcs from their territorial boundaries down to the last Russian. Please do not repeat this mistake. You have successfully attrited the Russian economy. If they had listened to you, they wouldn't have had even more leverage now, though. More leverage? Are you fucking insane? What leverage are we talking about in comparison to back then, where Russia had not hardened their defenses and basically de facto annexed 25%, 18% of the country? So many people died. Entire cities reduced to rubble. What are we talking about? They don't have more leverage now. That's crazy. They have more leverage in comparison to what they had, 6 months ago. They have more leverage in comparison to 6 months ago, but they don't have leverage in comparison to 6 months in. After the Russian invasion, that's when they had far more leverage, and they could have actually nipped this in the bud. Now, that is, of course, if Russia was willing to do that. Okay? At the time. And perhaps Russia was not willing to do that back then. Who knows? I'm not, clearly I've made wrong predictions on this Russia stuff. I'm simply saying what I say all the time: give peace a try. Okay? Give peace a shot. There is no harm in this. All wars end with treaties. Okay? That's how wars end. So do it now. Do it now when you have more leverage. Okay? This is what I have to say.
Not war, not war, not war. Just peace, just peace, just peace.
Give peace a try, capitulate to Russian imperialism. Oh my God. It's happening again. Oh my God, it's happening again. I'm going to die. It's happening again. This is literally what this is what the people said during the Turkey summit after Ukraine was able to push back. After Ukraine was able to push back successfully the Russian forces out of their capital, the situation has gotten far worse since then. Please. Oh. You assume Vladdy Poo-Poo would go for peace right now. I do generally agree with your analysis so far, but Putin is not so, but so. Yeah, for Russia. What? Worse for Russia? You think the situation right now is worse for Russia than it is for Ukraine? Dog, there's no world where 18% of Ukrainian territory has been taken over and de facto annexed by Russia that is a better position for Ukraine as opposed to Russia. There's no way this guy is Ukrainian, right? There's just no fucking shot that this person is Ukrainian, because now the majority of Ukrainians are in favor of ceding territory in exchange for a permanent cessation of hostilities. There's already the manpower problem hasn't gone away for Ukraine. Ukraine has actually gotten a little bit of a respite from the manpower problem by fucking utilizing autonomous warfare tools. However, it's not like those issues have gone away. Those issues still very much exist. I need you to know that the commie leader of my country had the exact same take as the exact same time and is still asked about when convenient. For the record, I've also made this argument. I've also made this argument before. I've warned about this. You don't want to, if you are Ukrainian living in Europe or living in America, you don't want what comes next, because there's going to have to be a solution to the manpower problem if the war continues. Okay? And the only way to make up for that manpower is not going to be Colombian mercenaries, right? Some of which are now being pulled elsewhere, the Gulf specifically. There are still plenty of them that are operating in Ukraine as well. It's not going to be the woman draft either. It's going to be expulsion. It's going to be deportations to Ukraine. Like, think about that. America revoking the temporary protected status of Ukrainian men and then shipping their asses back to Kiev so they can go and join the fucking front lines with no guarantee of a successful outcome. It's going to get to that point. They're going to stop issuing asylum to Ukrainian men. I think the EU has already talked about this. Nah, this sounds like a retweet Russia Today take. Okay. Okay. If you say so. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. What happens? How do you deal with the manpower problem? It's not like the Ukrainian government isn't doing its very best to literally pick up as many draft dodgers as possible and send them to the front line. Currently, they're doing that right now. They're doing that right now as we speak. You'll see 6 months from now where we're at. EU Commission proposes excluding fighting age men from Ukraine refugee scheme. The limitation wouldn't apply to those already under protection. And then it will. This is how it begins. But I guess this is Russia Today, from the brilliant minds behind Politico. Autonomous systems can't solve manpower. No, autonomous systems at the end of the day still run into the same fucking problem of air campaigns. Okay? Ukrainian resistance to forced mobilization just hit a new level. In Lviv, people overturned a conscription bus and smashed it to pieces, according to the local media. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's the more the public sentiment against the continuation of the war grows sour, the more aggressive the Ukrainian government has to get to force people into the front lines. Like, it's just not. This is the ultimate problem. This is the ultimate problem you have to solve for, which is manpower. Just say Ukraine is the responsible party, therefore they have to make the hard decisions. What do you mean? As in, like, they have to, forcibly conscript people? Yes, that's true. They have to. What are they supposed to do if the war is continuing? If they are continuing to wage this war, they need manpower. Dude, the suit works. I got told by a friend that their Kirkified conservative mom is always up to date on everything related to you, even keeping up with your tweets, and that's the suit. She wants to look away, but handsome man in suit draws her back in. Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Genuinely asking, why okay for Ukraine to give up land and take treaty, but not Palestinian take treaty with Israel? What treaty? What fucking treaty? Dude, what are you talking about? Dude, like, Israelis want to literally just wipe every fucking Palestinian off their ancestral homelands. Okay? There is no treaty. There is no real two-state solution, for example. They already control it. They already have complete control in ways that Russia never could over Ukraine. I remember being skeptical of your message when Ukraine first had the highest leverage, but I can see you right now. When Ukraine gets more leverage, people think they can somehow get even more and steamroll, which is not likely, and the results will be catastrophic. Also, with Israel, Russia is a sovereign country. Israel technically is not. Israel is just an extension of Western imperialism. Russia is doing its own shit. Okay? Like, there's perhaps no better example of how Israel operates than the fact that Hamas has already foregone its governing powers as of like yesterday. They're officially now allowing a technocratic committee to take control over the Gaza Strip, and Israel still assassinated people yesterday. The fuck are we talking about? Like, look, Russia has done a litany of war crimes. It's obviously illegal. It's irredentist behavior to go and fucking wage war in Ukraine and try to expand your territory into Ukraine, regardless of what security concerns you may or may not have. But there is definitely a difference. Like, we look at Bucha, right? And the things that Russia did in Bucha. Israel has done that everywhere in Gaza and in the fucking West Bank. Like, it's not like you look at some of the worst shit that Russia has done and you try to compare it to Israel. That's like Israel's Monday. Do you see what I'm saying? This isn't to like undermine Russia's gross violations of international law. I'm not in the business of doing that at all. I'm just, if you want to make that comparison, I mean, Israel's doing it in Lebanon right now. They're doing it in Gaza. They're doing it in Lebanon. They're trying to do it in Iran with America's go-ahead, with America's aid. Like, that's crazy. The thing that always bothers me is that Ukraine is a martial law, so no election, so they have conscription regime that now doesn't give anyone the ability to do electorally change policy. That's a dictatorship. However, I completely condemn Russia for its illegal invasion. I mean, I get why. I get why they're under martial law. They're being invaded. Like, I don't think that's a valid counter to that. I've never done that. I've never made that argument. But what's frustrating, the only reason why that argument actually, there's a little bit of credence to it, is that there is no appetite amongst the Ukrainian masses to continue the war as it stands currently. There's definitely, there's definitely a lot of people in civilized society in Ukraine that want an end to all of this, that want an end, that want a cessation to the hostilities, and they're even willing to give territory to Russia at this point to make it happen. You know what I mean? That's what's important. And of course, those demands are never going to be heard because there is a real martial law for understandable reasons. So I'm a little bit of a centrist on that front, where I think it's like kind of ridiculous to be like, oh, they have martial law. Yeah, okay, well, they're invaded. Like, they're getting fucking bombed. You know what I mean? Russia is like blowing up civilian areas with hypersonic missiles. It's a little crazy to be like, all right, well, time to do a fucking time to do an election. You know what I mean? This is the problem. Yes, Ukrainians souring on U.S. relationship from June 30th. 59 percentage point decline in U.S. approval since 2022 is the largest ever recorded. God, we are so fucking self-interested, by the way. I love that Gallup is just only... Gallup starts off with, Ukrainians don't fuck with America no more. Yeah, no shit, dude. The real viewpoint that matters here is the Ukrainian views towards the war. Okay? Ukraine should seek to negotiate an ending to the war as soon as possible is at 66%. Okay? And Ukraine should continue fighting until it wins the war is at its lowest at 24%. Okay? That's it. I mean, this was obviously the opposite. Ukraine should negotiate in 2023 was at 27%. And in 2022, obviously, it was, 73% continue the war, 22% negotiate an ending to the war. That's flipped in its entirety. So, yeah, I will always say give peace a chance. Give peace a shot. At worst, all you can do is just go back to square one, which is a perma war, right? And let me see this.
Asmongold and Hassan Piker are on the same level of competency. You're beyond cooked. Can you name a single politician Asmongold has ever interviewed? Can you name a single march Asmongold has ever been to? Can you name a room Asmongold has been in outside of his own? Can you name a position Asmongold has that he wouldn't fold on like a literal taco if his chat pressured him to? Can you name...
What do you mean? That's AI, by the way. What's AI?
Name anyone who won an election because of Asmongold? This ain't even a smooth brain take. I don't really watch either of these two people take. Because if you had to sit and watch an Asmongold stream with your phone out and Google search everything that he says, the only person you'd find more incorrect statements from is literally Joe Rogan. But if you did the same thing with...
Leftist caping for the neo-Nazi state of Ukraine and its fascist politics? Nah, this is crazy. Hassan, how can you fancy yourself some kind of leftist and you're like, oh, it's cool they canceled elections, they got rid of all the left-leaning parties? Okay, first of all, you're adding some shit in there that I'm not in agreement with. I never said it was appropriate for them to do that, and I never said that Ukraine is like a fucking perfect democracy in any way, shape, or form. Okay? You think I'm oblivious to the nationalists growing in power and influence and prominence? And rising through the ranks of the military as well. What do you think fucking happens when you get illegally invaded? That was my day one take, ironically enough. The second part of my very famous take when I said Vladimir Putin is bad, not mad. He would never invade Ukraine, especially to quote unquote denazify Ukraine, because all of the neo-Nazi and nationalist elements, once a country is invaded, are seen as the most significant emancipatory forces. Lo and behold, that's where we're at. I am aware of this. This is part of the reason why they fucking said I was a Vladimir Putin Z pusher the whole time, because I was talking about Azov Battalion and the nationalist forces. It's Russians' fault that Ukraine is neo-Nazified? Yes! What? Yes, dude. What are you talking about? Yeah. 100%. Are you fucking insane? Yes, dude. Yes. Yes. No shit. Are you nuts? I am very sane. Of course. Dog, what do you think happens? You cannot be serious? No, that is the one argument that I will not stand by at all. That is, you are denying every aspect of history. You are denying every aspect of history. The most fundamentalist, the most fascist, the most nationalist forces are the ones who are willing to pick up their fucking arms and fight back. America also played a role in this. Obviously, we armed the fucking Azov Battalion and shit. And we played a decent role in fomenting that discontent, legitimizing some of these forces. That much is true. But once you fucking invade, once you invade the country, all bets are off. What do you mean? I'd kill myself if I had to deal with your chatter sometimes. Yeah, it's like the most basic concept. Man, these chatters are fucking ridiculous. What's wrong with you psychos? Listen, brother, sister, understand something, okay? Tomorrow, let's say an alien force comes down to the planet and attacks the United States of America. Are you going to turn around and be like, well, that guy's a Klansman. I can't deal with these. And he's shooting at the fucking aliens. But, you know, our political disagreements are far more consequential. Or are you going to say, that's my brother? I love him and he's fighting for me. He's fighting for my emancipation. I'm joining the aliens? Okay, shut the fuck up. Yes, Ukraine was a hotbed for Nazis before the war. Pre-war, neo-Nazis all over the Europe used to hold gatherings in Ukraine and shit. Yes, I know that. I know all of that. I've covered all of that extensively. That's why they say I'm a Z pusher. I know. What do you think happens when you actually fucking invade the country, dude? That's it. I know. Ukraine was a hotbed for the international neo-Nazi movement. It always was. All the white supremacists from like Australia all the way to fucking the United States of America would go to Ukraine and would train with the neo-Nazi brigades in Ukraine. Guess what? Now, you know who else is holding arms next to those guys? The fucking anti-fascists, the socialists, the communists, the people that were in Ukraine that used to fight these fucking football hooligans and shit on the streets are now taking up arms to fight against Russia. It's normal. That's what happens. You literally are a Z pusher, though? That's so funny. I know. Zoran Mamdani. That's the only Z I push. I can't believe we're having this fucking conversation again. We're going back and forth on this. Anyway, let's see what else.
Hasan Piker, you would probably learn so much information, you would willingly go back to being a bot, which is what a lot of people do when they hear some of the information Hasan speaks about. I'd rather you said you ignore things that make you think about stuff than ever hear someone make this level of false equivalency. Hasan Piker is a streamer who gets involved in communities. He does community outreach. He actually sits down with incumbents. He sits down and has in-depth conversations with people who are running for office in numerous states, in numerous cities, in numerous districts. Politicians across the country are terrified of this man. No one fears Asmongold. Asmongold is an almost 40-year-old man who doesn't like showering and is at the beck and call of 12-year-olds and a bunch of grown losers. I don't even have anything to say after that. That's just what it is.
I hate that people really have me defending Hasan Piker. I also support Hasan Piker. He's completely transparent. Asmongold already discussed why he doesn't endorse politicians. Hasan is a radical communist that wants to see the Western world destroyed. You know nothing, Jon Snow. What the fuck? What position has Asmon folded on? That's why they call him Asmonfold. Mr. P versus Mr. Poop. I like that this guy's literally talking about like the false equivalence is so stupid, and he immediately goes, nah, I'm gonna do that. They literally only think in terms of 2010 media. What happened to Mr. Poo Poo Pee Pee Man? I don't know. I view Hasan as the same as John Lennon. They're both terribly complicated beings who, if you met them, they would probably just suck. Both performative, but also actually did things for their cause. Dude, there are so many. There are so many motherfuckers out there that just like, that have seen, I guess, the other people hating on me. So they're like, I can't have like a normal take on this motherfucker. I have to find some reason for why this dude is actually bad. It's very strange. Here's some good news, by the way. Since the Abdul El Sayed race El Sayed Senate campaign, since the debate, El Sayed Senate campaign brings in 150 grand since the debate and 1.25 million in the last 10 days. Matt Zaitlin says, in an older media and fundraising environment, Plattner would have blown up on the runway just from the Reddit post, tattoo, and early staff defections. But with Act Blue, Bernie, podcast, partisan cable, you can completely sidestep an older set of gatekeepers. I just don't really think you can discount the fact that Janet Mills was, 1, not popular, no Roy Cooper, 2, old, 3, did not campaign in a way that debunked age concerns, left got lucky with their opponent and wanted to claim it was all about Plattner's message. Oh my God. Matt, even when you're right, you're wrong. It's incredible. Even when Matt Iglesias is technically not wrong, he still finds a way to be wrong. A lot of these things are correct. Okay? He's always stuck between border, but he's stuck between the border of wrong and more wrong. Like, left got lucky with their opponent and wanted to claim it was all about Plattner's message. Dog, it was all about Plattner's message. Just give it up. You will. We know you will. You are going to give it up eventually. We know, because you're a fucking windsock. You're a professional windsock, Matt Iglesias. Why not have the take today rather than 6 months down the line where you reluctantly find a way to offer mealy-mouthed credence to what the left has been saying while simultaneously making it seem as though it's the left's fault that you couldn't get on board because we were too annoying. Remember when you were Mr. The Israel stuff after October 7th is going to collapse the left? It's over. It's done. There will never be an organized left movement in this country ever again. Remember how wrong you were, and now you basically tell politicians to just agree with me so you can do abundance elsewhere? Like, he literally has openly, 3 years after the fact, finally arrived at the conclusion that we were right. And he just straight up now tells politicians to just agree with me on Israel. Like, he literally goes, just agree with us on Israel. And then tried to explain to his audience that, like, we need to destroy zoning regulations and stuff like that. Like, we can push the abundance message that way. Just drop Israel, bro. That's what he's now saying. So here's the question I have. It's like, you're eventually going to arrive at left populism being a successful route to electoral success. Why not do it right now? Why not do it right now? He can't. He can't do it right now. He just has to arrive at the wrong point. Anyway, the left got lucky with their opponent is fucking bullshit. I guess we just keep getting lucky with our opponents everywhere. Yes, I saw, by the way, everyone kept spamming the Troy Jackson thing. I know. He said, this is unconscionable. Anybody with eyes and a heart knows the Israeli government is committing a genocide in Gaza. It has to end, and we as Americans have the power to end it. When I'm in the Senate, I'll never vote in favor of U.S. taxpayer-funded military aid to Israel. We want to hear an embargo from you, Troy. No weapons transfers to Israel. Deploy the Troy. Main candidate Nirav Shah at a May event comparing the scars he saw as he worked in Cambodia to the genocide in Gaza. After every single genocide, the world says the very same thing, never again. But when it comes to Gaza, he says it's not being upheld. Okay, maybe Nirav Shah is actually anti-genocide. Will you vote to send aid to Israel? No. Do you think it's genocide? Yes, he did say that. I still think he's phony. He's Mr. I'm defending the landlords. Anyway, you're in the new Reckless Ben Lego video, by the way. Okay, we'll watch it later. I talked about a lot on this on my stream, but the problem we've had until this year, there wasn't sufficiently developed DSA to run in all the opportunities that gave the sloppulous progressives opportunities that we should have had from DSA. After this year, it's very clear that we can win anywhere. DSA must grow and develop fast for 2028. I agree. That's what I see as well. There will come a day when I won't even have to endorse people who aren't democratic socialists. There will come a day. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. $25 million from AIPAC now spent in the Michigan primary, the most one organization has ever spent in a congressional primary in U.S. history, beating its own record against Bowman 2 years ago. And there's still a month to go. Yeah. AIPAC's United Democracy Project and Super PAC, A Stronger Michigan, file over 5 million in anti-Abdul al-Sayed ads, literally 1 minute apart from each other. Heck yeah, can't wait for your right-wing arc. What do you mean? Shaw is very bad. I know. I read all that. He said he's a University of Chicago guy, took millions from 314, got a lot of money for the Kochs for school privatization. I know. I read all of that. I warned against that. He also said he thinks landlords are the most maligned people in American society and he'll stand with them. I do not trust Shaw. What is this? Post serious shit like this. Post serious shit, 7K likes. Post joke, 57K likes. Do you have a new message for Mitch, sir? Yeah, this is, I cannot believe how viral this went. I went to college with Haley Stevens, and let me tell you, it's really important that Michigan elects Abdul al-Sayed. She ran for student government president while she was secretly applying for a study abroad program at Oxford, won and got into the program at Oxford, then resigned as student government president. That's awesome. What gives? Anyway.
And will only make it safer, including for oil.
Gas prices had been coming down on the heels of the ceasefire in Iran after hitting a peak of more than $4.50 back in May. But as the conflict heats back up, some analysts warn the national average could soon push toward $4 again. Adriana.
All right, Weeja, thank you so much. We are now joined by CBS News national security analyst Aaron McLean. He is also the host of the School of War podcast. Aaron, we're so glad you're here this morning because, as you know, when the Memorandum of Understanding was announced, there was so much relief. But yet we are here again. How did this happen?
Yeah, that relief may have been misplaced. How it happened is that the MOU itself, frankly, was poorly designed in some regards, including over the key issue of who controls the Strait of Hormuz. The Americans, President Trump, said that the MOU means that the strait is open, but the Iranians interpreted the same language in the MOU as meaning they control the strait. And for them, controlling the strait means they get to shoot at ships that aren't complying with their instructions. And that's exactly how we found ourselves where we are now.
The U.S. says that its attacks have been in response to Iran shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Tell us what the status of the strait is right now.
Traffic's crashed out pretty badly. I mean, we were at a point a couple of weeks ago where we saw numbers on the order of 60, 70 ships a day going through. Those are not pre-war numbers. That's about half of the pre-war average, but it was healthier by far than what we've seen of late. As of the last 24, 36 hours, things have slowed to a crawl, as you might expect, given the amount of violence both in the strait and on the Iranian coast adjacent to it.
Aaron, with all this back and forth, it seems, this is a constant vicious cycle. Once again, where do you expect this to go in the coming days?
All right, so this is where I sort of regret to say the next thing, which is it's certainly possible that peace could break out in our time and there be a deal. It's possible that there be massive escalation and we see a return to the kind of conflict we had in March and April. But I actually think a middle course right now is also likely and worth considering, that what we are looking at.
Isn't it kind of weird the media is being honest about Iran's understanding of the MOU instead of just blaming him for breaking it? No, because we've already gone above the line. I think Donald Trump gave a moment of respite to the world with the MOU, and everyone was like, oh, fuck, okay, like, we're chill. Like, things are going to get back to normal. So now, violating the memorandum of understanding and then going back to tit-for-tat strikes, all of a sudden, the crisis grows, right? Again, it's the only crowd that is benefiting from this will be the Israel crowd. That's it. That's it. Europe wants this to be done. Europe wants America to abide by the memorandum of understanding. The Asian markets certainly want that. The only country on the planet that doesn't want this to continue, that wants this to continue, is Israel. Americans don't want this to continue either, but they're too busy being Americans and not giving a shit about anything until they finally are forced to reckon with the negative consequences of continuing this war and dumping into the critical line in our strategic reserves.
Right now, these intermittent eruptions of violence, this constant back and forth in the strait itself, this general disagreement, this mid-grade war, that this may be the new normal and we may see this persist for some time.
Yeah. All right. Aaron McLean, thank you so much.
Here we go again. It's definitely not peace, but it's not quite all-out war. A second night of American strikes on Iran, destroying air defense systems and missile launch sites, sending oil prices rising again. Iran predictably responding with its own attacks, targeting, it said, US military sites in Kuwait and Bahrain. President Trump talking both of possible negotiations and further fighting.
We just hit them very hard. And I say we hit them 20-1. Every time they hit us, we're going to hit them 20. They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal. That's the problem.
The clashes center on control of the Strait of Hormuz, a fifth of the world's oil and gas supply used to peacefully pass through here before the war. A memorandum of understanding between the US and Iran last month saw ships finally begin to move once again, but left control of the strait, never previously an issue, still to be discussed. Tit-for-tat military strikes resumed this week after Iranian forces targeted several tankers transiting without their permission. Iran wants all ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz to take this route along its coast, while the US has encouraged them to transit near the coast of Oman. Since the MOU was signed, 917 commercial vessels have passed through the strait, according to data from leading global trade intelligence firm Kepler. 290 of them along the Iranian route, but just over 300 along the Omani coast. Another 326 turned their locators off to avoid
Why did Iran do this? Wasn't it a good deal for Iran? No. Iran has bled and fought for new leverage that they're not going to give up. The leverage being that they get to control who transits through the Strait of Hormuz. They don't, like, they're not going to stop ships from transiting. They just want to be able to control it. And it's important because it's a security guarantee. It's existential for Iran. Now they no longer have to go and engage in the process of enriching uranium. Right?
protection by Iran, most likely traveling close to Oman.
The problem is that the Iranians believe that the U.S. intention here is to erode Iran's leverage, its most important leverage, which is its control over the Strait of Hormuz, in order to weaken Iran's hand in the run-up to the negotiations over a final agreement or resumption of another round of conflict.
Inside Iran, massive crowds for the final day of the funeral of the country's slain supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. replete with a massive sign threatening to take revenge on
Oh, that's awesome.
Trump. Belligerent rhetoric is a given at these state-sponsored rallies. But behind the scenes, there is said to be a division between hardline and more moderate factions of the regime.
Only the deaths of Trump and Netanyahu will satisfy us. We must not compromise
Yeah, what did they mean by that?
under any circumstances, as we have no reason to compromise with the US and Israel.
This might be the Liz Trump was talking about. I mean, yeah, of course they want to fucking kill him, dude. What do you mean? Like,
Iran clearly feels it has emerged from this war with the upper hand, as foreign dignitaries from around the Middle East paid their respects to the assassinated supreme leader and his family.
Wait, hold on. Let's go to the TikTok comments. Mourners carry signs threatening Trump during former Ayatollah Khamenei's funeral procession. I'm tired of being teased. What is taking so long? Dang, what's taking so damn long? They have full rights to be upset. Promise? Our hopes and prayers are with you. He plays golf in Florida. My heart goes out to the mourners and their wishes. Okay, listen, I disavow. I disavow. I disavow. But it's there's like one comment in disagreement with the Iranians, man. We do not like this. I disavow this. I would never. I am not. I hate. Yeah, this is what Donald Trump meant when he said, I'm number one on TikTok. What he meant was he's the number one hated. I'm the number one hated on TikTok.
There were pointed chapters from the Quran recited. This one, during the visit of Saudi officials, commemorates a historic battle between a Muslim army and a far greater force of unbelievers. Allah supports with victory whom He wills, goes the verse. Neither Iran nor the US want to return to full-scale war. But this is looking dangerously like it could be the new normal. Sporadic strikes, significant economic disruption, unless somehow negotiations and diplomacy produce a sudden breakthrough.
Well, Arsenio Dominguez is the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, and he joins us now. Do you have a view on who is right and who is wrong, or are they both wrong?
Well, at this stage, what we're actually looking is to, first of all, uphold the principles of international law that regulate international trade for navigation. It is important that the two parties in the conflict clarify their views in relation to the Memorandum of Understanding. But for us, it's very clear at the International Maritime Organization that the littoral states surrounding the Strait of Hormuz have the duties and the responsibilities of managing the strait. That doesn't include impositions of who transits through the strait, but providing the necessary assistance, safety requirements, as well as navigations. So this is why it's so important that the negotiations continue, and we also can bring the knowledge and know-how in relation to the operations that have been going through the Strait of Hormuz for many decades.
But we know there's a basic disagreement. Iran believes the agreement at the moment means that it should administer every vessel passing through the Strait of Hormuz. The Americans are trying to encourage people to use the other side of the water, the Omani side of the water, which the Iranians are desperate to stop because it would weaken them in future negotiations. So what should ships do today if they want to try and cross?
Well, at present, the reality is that I have reiterated my message that whilst there's no clarity on the safety of the seafarers, and in particular those innocents that have been trapped for many months now in the Strait of Hormuz, we should not take any risks. It is important also to recognize that during a conflict, there's a lot of statements that will be made that not necessarily will follow the actions that we take here at the organizations when we have the negotiations. So what we're working on is on the relationships between, in particularly Iran and Oman, how we can reinstate the usage of the traffic separation scheme that was adopted by IMO back in 1968, and before the conflict was operated jointly by Oman and Iran. And in the meantime, we need to continue to work on those safe guarantees for the countries to allow the trade to resume. But again, we cannot forget that whilst the conflict is going, it's going to be difficult to immediately get a final solution, and there are further guarantees that we will need required before trade resumes as it was before the conflict started.
Now, we know that eventually Iran would like to start charging ships passing the Strait of Hormuz, but right now they are not charging. So why would any ships not coordinate with Iran? Why would they try and take this other route that the Americans want them to?
We have to recognize the first part of the situations in relation to charges or fees. That is outside.
Have you covered the very important part that Khamenei's body was transported by a Finnish grocery store's coal truck? Finland was mentioned. Is that real? I thought that was AI. I thought that was AI.
International
Is it
law.
not?
There's no legal basis for that to be introduced on straits for international navigation.
But there aren't any at the moment.
We also need to recognize... I beg your pardon?
There aren't any charges at the moment, are there?
No, there are no charges, but we also need to recognize the importance of reiterating the usage of the traffic separation scheme that went through a process in these organizations of verifying that it's the safest route to take. The other two routes that we have at present, which are considered extraordinary routes or temporary routes, have not gone through the process of our verifications in relation to any risks, navigational charts, etc. We can use them now because, of course, the traffic separation scheme that was established in 1968 is not safe to do so because of mines. So in the meantime, that's part of the coordinations that we're carrying out. But we need to get the parties back onto the table, because if we want to resume the operations...
It was an old truck that a delivery contractor had sold to Iran without removing the graphics. I choose to believe that Finland did this on purpose. Sorry. It's in my head canon. Yeah, no, Finland did that on purpose. They actually are offering critical support to the Islamic Republic. Much respect to Finland in this endeavor.
In the strait, as we were
Finns rise up.
used to, we need to start thinking first on all the safety guarantees, not only for